Taulelei is an international security expert. He was a former Australian Special Air Services soldier where he specialised in parachute operations. Since leaving the Australian Army in 1997, he has worked in director, manager and senior advisory roles in the security industry, and particularly specialises in hostile environments and terrorism.
The industries that I've worked in, predominantly mining and oil and gas, running security and community affairs for different companies. What I've found, I'm drawn towards high-risk environments. Working in Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, West Africa, there's a very real threats to do with terrorism, robbery, kidnapping, all sorts of violence that can just come out of nowhere and unexpectedly. So what I've found as the security guy, you'd be briefing people, they're listening, they're leaning forward, they're taking notes, they're asking you questions when they don't understand something. Working security in Australia, the chance of terrorist attack in Australia is considerably less. The chance of roadside violence in Australia compared to Papua New Guinea is marginal or negligible in comparison. So the types of the reception, the credibility, the amount of support, the resources you have access to, Australian security, in my experience to date, has been pretty much a checklist and compliance exercise. We need a security guy, we need someone to control access control, but the risks you're facing aren't as big, the consequences of those sorts of things. So it's really more along the lines of access control, compliance. It's tied in with making sure that you don't get your access pass or your credentials expire if your inductions have elapsed or anything like that, or if you've been off site for 3 months, they automatically switch off, and those sorts of things, as opposed to people coming into your site with firearms, taking hostages or trying to do you real and deliberate harm. Yeah, it's not that big a deal in Australia. So I found much more real working overseas, coming from a background where understanding those kind of threats. Where my military career eventually carried me was I was part of a small team of people that would actually conduct target assessments. We would look at remote sites and we would plan and calculate what is the best way to take out this facility with the least number of people, the minimum amount of explosives, sneak in, sneak out and do damage. Taking down ships, getting on board vessels alongside, vessels underway, aircraft, those sorts of things. So learning how to attack those sort of targets was perfect for when I started getting employed for how to defend them. The lessons I learned in maritime security were, that most of my peers were just reading a script or something that they'd learned out of books, whereas I'd actually been part of teams and crews of people coming up along the vessel that's underway. I was there trying to hook that ladder or that painter's pole with a caving ladder and a carabiner onto the gunnels, and then climbing up the side of that thing while it's underway. Having learnt those lessons, or as a coxswain, trying to come up alongside a vessel that's manoeuvring, crossing its wake, going through the spray, not being able to see clearly where you're going. All those little challenges. Having done it from the other side, it put me in good position for being able to give factual, practical, cost-effective, and just the right-sized solutions for people, customers, instead of going straight to the gold-plated or platinum solution that was way over the top. Just finding some smart, clever ways to achieve the same results. One of the things I think held me in pretty good stead, I learned very quickly, someone had the saying about, the story about the two guys getting chased by a bear, and one of them stops to put his running shoes on, His friend's going out of his mind, going, "What are you doing? You're not going to beat a bear just because you're wearing running shoes." And our hero smiles at his silly friend and says, "Dude, I don't have to beat the bear. I just have to outrun you." And that's threat transfer. You don't have to be terrorist proof or anti-pirate proof as far as your ships are concerned. You just have to be better than the other guys. Fail the target selection procedure and transfer the threat to the next silly person who didn't take the same precautions that you did. Just be incrementally harder target. Key changes I've seen in the security industry in the last 30 years have been to do with the adoption of technology. We used to joke in the old day, the old security systems were about, I called it 3 Gs, guards, gates and guns. You know, that's how most people would view security, and those were the 3 things that you resourced. Then we got a bit smarter as an organisation, and people started talking about the 4 tenets of physical security: deter, detect, delay and respond. And a lot of people built some fairly robust systems using those 4 tenets. Later, crime prevention through environmental design became a big thing. Some people thought that it actually didn't work too well with the 4 tenets of deter, detect, delay, respond, but I actually think the 2 integrate beautifully together. And what we're seeing now, more and more, I'm seeing integration of technical solutions that don't replace physical security planning and design. They complement and enhance it. You know, using robots for patrols, not to replace humans, but to complement them. You know, you can task your humans with those things at the gate where there are going to be more exceptions, and task the robot with those boring long foot patrols or wheels now in remote parts of remote sites or high risk areas where you've seen somebody with a firearm. You think he might have climbed over your fence because he wants to kill monkeys or wallabies on your site, which I've dealt with in Papua New Guinea and in Africa on more occasions that I like to think. Instead of going and confronting a person who's armed, you can send the robot down there to do it. Use of drones, boy oh boy. We did some pretty amazing stuff in Africa with drones, working up 3D models. So if we were going to do a large illegal mining, anti-illegal mining operation one evening, we're going to do a snatch and grab. We want to arrest 6 guys. So we brief the dog teams, we brief the spotting teams, brief the military guys, and you brief the police. But I built up a 3D model of the area we're going to work in using a drone. We'd fly that at 4 p.m. Between 4 and 5. The software would build up the 3D model in about an hour, and around about 7 o'clock as the sun's going down, I'd be briefing the key teams, and I could actually turn and shape the model to actually place them. This is your observation post. As you look down through here, this is what you can see. Here across in front of you is some dead ground. You can't see this. We'd spin the model around. They go, that's why dog team 2, you'll be down in this low ground looking, and people were actually sitting there virtually on the ground looking at the area they're going to be operating in. They've all instantly got a snapshot of, if I get into trouble, I know there's another team down here. Behind me is the main road. It just made life so much easier. So integrating complex patrols, canine, aerial reconnaissance, surveillance with drones, some of the infrared technology and cameras and binoculars that we have now are just phenomenal. So the industry is getting smarter and smarter at starting to adopt that stuff. Even my phone, the phone of choice I believe for most tough guys are those Caterpillar smartphones. I've got a Cat S61. I'd like to throw it away and upgrade it to the new version Cat S62, but as a tough phone it won't break. But it's got a FLIR camera for thermal detection. And I've had so many incidents, something's happened, come out, you pan around the car park, and I go straight away, I've got 2 hot bonnets, and there's 2 cold shadows here where cars were parked and have moved on. Give me CCTV for the last 15 minutes. I want to find out who those drivers were. Looking at, we had an emergency response team almost made entry into a gold room on one site because they thought they had a fire inside. Gold room is the holiest of holies. There's a whole strict set of protocols for who can get into that facility and who and how you get out. It's an arduous procedure, but to crash and bash through there was completely unacceptable, particularly if you didn't have to. So having the fancy phone, I was able to pull it out, pan around at 2 o'clock in the morning, convince these guys we don't have the heat the temperature in the ceiling and the roof space that you should have if you actually got a proper fire in there. So no, a small team of 4 firefighters, myself and 2 other security personnel will make controlled entry. We'll find out what's happened, and then you're going to go through the entire strip search process as we come back out. It's going to take about an hour to clear you and all your equipment. And then we went, and it worked. But yeah, just having a smartphone makes a big difference. Technology is definitely the biggest way ahead. Some of the camera systems, LIDAR, thermal, they've got these spectral analysis tools for some of the cameras where you can even be looking at what type of crops, how many weeds are inside your crops. Are some of the people in your area growing illegal substances? That leads into other questions and technologies where people start to explore if they are growing something illegal, how are they getting it out of there? If there's a trafficking circuit and system in the area that you're operating, trafficking's a problem because they don't just come and collect drugs. You can push drugs, firearms, explosives, people, anything through a trafficking network. So those kind of things are, and being able to detect the presence or the likelihood of the presence of those sorts of things using technology is a smart move. And big changes and getting bigger all the time. I predict the next big space is going to be the opposite of using drones. It's going to be protection from drones. I've looked at and worked with the ADF, AFB, Waypol. In fact, Waypol here have been really active in that space, looking at how do you protect crowds of people from drones. What does industry do when you've got a major hazardous facility where you can't even take a cigarette lighter, and yet you can let an $800 drone with the lithium polymer battery fly over it? You know, what is the real risk to the facility? And then what are the legal implications of that? Because you can't interfere with a drone if you do in any way. And there are 4 ways to take down drones, but they're all illegal. You're either breaking the Civil Aviation Safety Act Authorities regulations, or you're breaking the Australian Communications Media Authorities Telecommunications Act. So legislation needs to come a long way to catch up. People just need to work smarter on detection and avoiding having conflicting behaviours. So yeah, technology, big game changer moving forward. Working overseas in security is a bit like working offshore in oil and gas. You know, there's a joke that says you can't go offshore, you can't work offshore unless you've worked offshore. Yeah. How does that work? It's a tough nut to crack. It's a hard one to get into. I think you have to have, number one, that excellence. If people are going to pay all that money to fly you all the way to another country, there's got to be something about you that's bigger and better than all your peer group. So I first cut my stuff with my security work, doing as a soldier, working on the front gate, you know, hours and hours and hours of standing on a front gate with a rifle over my shoulder, inspecting passes, checking people's vehicles. You know, it starts with the grind, the long, slow, hard grind. You do that stuff, you do it with a curious mind. You start to be the only person who noticed and reported that, hey, you know, those lights are out down the back there. Learning about, like, instead of just standing at a static post, checking your phone and your emails and stuff, looking around, what are the vulnerabilities for this place? You know, what is it that if I was going to break in here, how would I break in? Where would I climb in? You know, those sorts of things. So I found that a lot of security people these days are just quite content to just clock in and clock out. Some of the things I'll do if I'm working for a particular organisation, in fact, one of the most rewarding things I'll do, I'll go and grab the guard force and say, right, come with me, we're going to go and look at the fence. Everyone rolls their eyes like, what? Look at the fence. We go down there and say, right, what are you seeing? They say, I see a fence. Hey, look, tell me what you actually see. And so we start talking through it. What's a fence made of? And we go through how the spacing of the poles, and how uniform it is. If they're every 3 metres, then we start using the spacing of the poles to judge distance. Well, little tip number one, they can say 30 metres from this area here. Why? Because it was 10 poles away from where this occurred. So that improves their reporting capability. We look at the fencing fabric itself, and the tension top, middle and lower tension lines, top rails or bottom rails, if they're fitted, how the wire, the fencing fabric mesh is actually fixed to those tension lines. Looking at how the wraps go around the main posts, how deep the footings are. We talk about that. Is the top cranked on the posts, and if so, in or out, and why? Once they're actually able to see the detail on the fence, then I'll walk them through an exercise and I'll say, right, I want to climb the fence right here. Where am I going to put my hands? And invariably they'll point to exactly at shoulder level. That's where you grab the fence with your hands and say, right, now where am I going to put my foot as I push myself up? And it's around about knee level is where people will put their foot. Ask the question, are my hands going to pull or push the wire? Or your hand's going to pull? What's my foot going to do? It's going to push. What's it going to do to the fabric? Well, it's going to bend it a little bit. And I say, can you see that if you stand directly in front of it? No, you can't. Where would the best place be to see that? Well, from an oblique angle. So right, look down there, 100 metres, and they'll have a look and they go, oh, I can see it's been pulled out, it's been pushed in. Go, exactly. So now we've got two things. You can see here's evidence of where someone's climbed. We've got a directional indicator because the top's pulled and the bottom's pushed. So we can assume they've climbed in at this point. Then we talk, are you going to climb in the middle of the wire or at the post? And everyone says at the post because it's more solid. So we talk about that and say, right, now picture yourself hanging onto that little cranked top of the post like a possum, right? You're about to launch yourself over the barbed wire and climb in there. Where are your feet? Well, they'll be on the top tension line, but the fencing fabric sticks up above that. So what are your feet going to do to that fencing fabric? Well, they're going to bend it. They can bend it in or out. It's going to be bent in. I've got another directional telltale now. So I said, right, so when you're driving around in your security patrols, you don't have to check the entire fence line. All you've got to do is look from a long way down. I'll teach them about moire patterns, interference patterns. You know, you get those sort of like a oily pattern as you look down a repeated sequence or pattern of wire from an acute angle. You actually get those oil movement patterns. You watch that moire pattern roll down a fence and bang, any little deviation will stick out. So we teach them to look for those. I teach them to look at where the fence posts are to see if the tags are pushed down from the top of the fencing fabric. Straight away their patrolling gets so much better. You drive the car, I'll check the fence. And they'll spot where someone's climbed in. We've got directional telltales that'll tell them whether they climbed in or out, or if the pull-push is contrary to the tags on the top, most likely they climbed in and out at the same spot. So we work through all those things there, and then we move off to a side and say, have a look at the ground. And then we start talking through the ground sign. See where your feet have disturbed this. We're only standing there for 3 minutes, and already, you know, there's a change in coloration. The moisture of the stones we've turned over is darker than the dry tops of the other ones surrounding it. The colour of the soil has changed. And then how long is it going to take? It'll take until it rains for that to all wash out and go away. So now we can age a site, we can tell there's been some sort of ground disturbance, we've got directional telltales showing in and out, and we've got a way of detecting that just while they're doing a vehicle patrol, you know. So it takes their security capabilities to the next level. But that's not enough. Then I'll push them on. Okay, if you're going to break into this place, why would you climb over this post here as opposed to any other post? Everyone's usually stumped by that question. So, okay, given the choice, would you choose to climb in here at midday or midnight? Oh, midnight, of course. Everyone's happy with that. So, okay. So now again, why would you choose this particular post here? And then I'll look up, and they'll all look up, and above us is a light bulb. So I said, oh, the light's broken. I said, exactly. So daytime patrols, you're checking the fence. Nighttime patrols, what should you check? Oh, where are the lights out? And and then the lights come on, you know. And then they become so much more better informed about how to do their job. There's only a person who's climbed over a lot of fences, cut through a lot of fences, that can develop that level of detail and scrutiny and understanding on how to defeat it. But by giving that and sharing that passion with other people, 5% of them will pick it up and run. 5% of those security officers I speak to they'll write the most amazing reports, that happened in Indonesia when I was working there, these similar exercise and training with some guys. The reports came back, some guys broke in before 6:30 and they left after 8 o'clock. I'm thinking, how did you do that? And they'd even looked at, I can see footprints where they've come in heavy, going out, and the footprints coming in when there was a light rain shower had footprints in them. So raindrops in them. The ones going out had no raindrops. So that level of observation, they were able to work out where they climbed in, where they climbed out, estimated what they stole, and then worked out a whole range of things. We used some clever technology after that we couldn't find a pattern to that theft in Indonesia. So the technology we applied, I2, it's the latest version of what used to be Analyst Notebook. We had the pretty much ugly old DOS-based system with a dongle, and we couldn't work out what is the common thing with this pattern of theft. But there was definitely recurring theft, similar theme. We put all of the company rosters into Analyst Notebook, and it spat out when this guard works on that back gate and this guy is working in your high value warehouse, and they're both on night shift. That's when theft occurred. 85% match up. So technology and training. People's reactions in emergency situation can take you completely by surprise. I've been in situations where people I would have thought that I could rely on have completely fallen apart and gone to jelly and actually become a liability. And then other people that I thought, oh boy, this person's going to need some, and they've absolutely surprised me. One good example, we had a camp attack in Papua New Guinea. It was for the onshore pipeline during construction, they basically have 3 camps. One is fixed, one is being demobilised, it's leapfrogging the fixed camp and being constructed at another. Once that one's established, this one starts getting broken down and it just keeps moving up along the chain, and you just have this whole rolling work front. These camps are always in some state of disarray. None of them are permanent facilities, and they just leapfrog and move. Getting solid security operating in places like that can be tricky. You're engaging with different parts of the community. Some are happy to see you, some are not. And we got attacked by some people who thought they should be employed and that the other people that were employed shouldn't have been there. That was their opinion. The other guys begged to differ. The fighting broke out and it came straight into the camp. Shots are fired. They're going after the police to start with. So now the cops are fighting withdrawal to leave the camp because their presence was actually escalating the violence. So a smart call on their part. They fought their way back to a corner, cut a hole in the fence and left. Now there's the rest of us just locked down inside the camp. Whole thing was stabilised. Next morning when it's calmed down, we've had to deal. There was one guy was killed during the entire event. Most of the people causing trouble had left because they got into the transport yard, stole the cars and all took off. So that was good. Cars we can replace. We had to evacuate everybody out. Now that the cars have been stolen, we've got a big open area where we can get the helicopters in and pick them up and cycle them out. We've lined up all these big burly expats and we've got these manifests written and we've stacked it so that the helicopters would be rolling through every 5 minutes. So from skids hitting the ground, doors are open, those guys are in and loaded and moved and taking off within 4 minutes, and the next one's on approach as he lifts off. We had all this organised and it's running pretty well, but some of these big tough expats, they were big but they weren't that tough. Some of these guys were trying to get on an earlier helicopter flight, they're trying to bring more equipment out than they wanted to. There's this one little girl we had working in the office, little Papuan girl. really quiet little voice. She was trying to coordinate these the manifesting, and she's just lost it. Grabbed hold of the manifest and said, right, I got this. And she just turned around and ripped these guys a new one and just took over the whole thing. She got people who had more baggage than they were supposed to, got it all dumped in another area and said, if we get a chance, it's coming up. If not, it's staying here. She whipped them all into shape, got them into rows, organised them, got them briefed into their sorties and got them on that aircraft. Absolutely amazing. I think the other thing that's worth noting as well, when it comes to people's responses under duress, I firmly believe in the bucket theory when people talk about PTSD. You know, you can have somebody you worked with for quite a while that's been through some pretty tough things, and it's bounced off them, you know, and they just bounce back and get on with it, and they're quite resilient, very robust. And then all of a sudden something small will happen, and that's it. That was just that one little bit too far for them, and they're not coping with it too well. That bucket theory about you've only got so much room in your bucket. I think I've seen that happen a few times. That makes perfect sense to me. One of the keys I found to people's resilience is their network. You know, do they have somewhere to go, someone to talk to, someone they trust? Most people can't talk to their partners. I know I can't tell my wife about the experiences and what I do for two reasons. One, she'd worry more than she needs to, but mainly because she just hasn't got a clue about the type of environments I'm in, the type of people I'm meeting with, the type of work that I'm doing. I'm very comfortable in that space, but she would be very uncomfortable, and it'd be hard for her to fathom. So she's not the right person for me to talk to. But I've got a group of close friends that I can talk to. So the guys I work with in Africa, we talk on a semi-regular basis. Or sometimes you just get a phone call out of the blue, and it's just someone just wants to shoot the breeze and get something off their chest. You know, I think resilience, having a group of people you can confide in, is a really, really important factor. And also it goes so far as to say the complete opposite as well. If you don't have someone tight, close, trustworthy, that knows you well enough that you can tell them anything, a complete stranger can be the solution as well. But the secret to dealing with most tough situations and experiences, I think, is talking about it, talking to people who understand, talking to people who don't judge you, and just talking it through, getting it out of your head and out there. So yeah, I've learned never prejudge, never guess. I can rely on this person or I can't. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised every time. The tourist ads describe it as the land of the unexpected. Most security operators that work there think that's a bit euphemistic. They can go from zero to crazy in a heartbeat, and then back again. We had an incident where some guys had stolen a car. They'd stolen one of our cars. They'd crashed it, and they'd killed two girls when they crashed the car. So now we're being blamed for the death of these girls. And look, I can understand why the village would want to blame us, because we had the capacity to compensate them, and these other two guys, they just headed for the hills. So there was a lot of aggression. I'd come down the road in a convoy of vehicles. I just finished explaining to people, wind your windows down, say good morning in their local dialect, show them some respect, it's their land. And we come around the corner, two trucks pulled up, the drivers are getting pulled out, all the gear's been taken out of the trucks, all the windows behind me in the cars all went up, the doors got locked, they all turned around and they took off back down the road. I looked at what was going on, I thought, it's time to get out of the car. So brief the driver, leave the window open, if I come running back and dive through that window, you get whatever's left of me out of here. He sat there with eyes like dinner plates, keeping an eye on what was going on around him. started talking to the crowd. So they turned on me initially. They were very aggressive and wanted to know what I was doing about things. I made it pretty clear that I don't make decisions. I'm here to find out what happened, and I'll take your information and I'll take it up to the people who make decisions. They'll make a decision and I'll bring it back to you, but I'll carry your voice to these guys. So notebook out, pen in hand, taking notes. That was going okay for a while, up to a point where there were a couple of really aggressive people. The shouting, you could hear the whole tone changed when they started talking about the girls who died. And the guys, everyone carries a bush knife in Papua New Guinea. Just about everyone's a farmer. They've all got bush knives. They're not carrying arms because they're murderers. They're carrying them because it's a tool of their trade. But the bush knives that were being held at arm's length next to me, the guys are now standing with one shoulder in, that's if you're going to strike somebody, you're not going to stand there facing them squarely. You're going to go at them from an angle, and the knives are starting to come up on an angle, and they reach 90 degrees down. I thought, boy, we're getting close to them having a go at me and getting their payback. Righto. First thing I thought about was, I've got some pretty good insurance, so I know my family's going to be okay. So that was the level of comfort. I was worried about my driver. I was thinking, I don't like his chances of getting out of here if I get attacked. And I thought about my kids. Then, thinking on my feet, I looked around, I pulled out my cigarettes and said, look, easy. Everybody just calm down. Handed out a whole packet of cigarettes, lit all their smokes, kept one for myself. Smoking can be good for your health. The whole thing calmed down enough that we could record the information about the girls that was really upsetting this particular group. Got it on paper, and then we could move on to the rest, which was the core focus. Don't talk about the girls who had died, talk about the process for compensation, and let's get the thinking shifted from revenge to financial contributions and other processes for resolving the issue. And we did. We managed to move past that point and got it into the next phase. Got all the information I needed, took it back up to the bosses. They all looked at it. They came up with a plan for how we were going to deal with this and negotiate it out and find the people responsible, the different companies and subcontractors that were involved and who would lead the negotiations. But no one wanted to go back there. So I was the guy who did probably the first 3 or 4 trips just to talk to these guys until we could get a delegation. And then I think we actually provided a bus to get them. They didn't give us back our trucks, and we'll give you a bus and get your people up to Tari Hospital where these 2 girls were at the morgue there. So yeah, but had a few circumstances where things didn't exactly go to plan, but most of them managed to talk our way out. I found in general, and it's not probably the most evident in Papua New Guinea, it's a bit more tangible when you're dealing with people who are visibly upset and aggressive, but in general, just about everywhere I found, if you're honest and you're strong and assertive, but you remain respectful, there's not many situations where that's going to get you into trouble. In fact, quite the opposite. I think that's why I made it home. Now I'm back in Australia. The main thing that brought me back was COVID taught me that family is probably the most important thing you can have in your life. Your family and your health. Working overseas, doesn't matter how good the money is, doesn't matter how exciting or challenging the job is. At the end of the day, if I'm spending a silly amount of time away from my family, it's not really that rewarding. The second part for me was I had an opportunity to switch from oil and gas in towards green energy, and that lights my fire. Doing something that's good for the country, good for the planet, being able to do that, get paid good money and be around my family, it's a no-brainer. So I'm looking forward to seeing more time with my 6 grandchildren, fix and drive my electric vehicle. Yeah, that's the main. I think that's the biggest thing for me. Just being at home with family, spending some time around. my kids.